when we first got married, we found very quickly that we had different upbringings when it came to chores and cleanliness.
Money.
Was Kris a slob?
No. I was the slob.
What?
Kris, today I want to talk about a downward spiral because I've seen it in a number of marriages, of family members, friends, and it seems like when a marriage starts to have trouble, it just goes downhill so quick until it reaches rock bottom before they do anything about it. Have you seen this in your guys' experience?
Yeah, I mean, Clint and I, we've been married for 20 years, and I think we've had our own downward spirals, and we've had to figure out how to pull up, right? And I think more often than not, it comes down to how you resolve conflict.
Sure.
And if you don't have a great strategy or if you don't have a system for it, then yeah, it can get worse and worse and worse, and then actually not get better, and then it ends the relationship. What's up, Kris Krohn here. I am pausing my own podcast to make sure that you have my cell phone number. Because as you're listening and thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could text Kris and ask him a real estate question or a business question, a marriage question, a health question, I got news for you. The phone number is right here. It's 385-217-3477. Save this in your phone and literally start texting me right now. Just drop your name and say, hey, Kris, it's whoever you are, and ask me a simple question. Let's go.
Yeah, well, and most people don't have a strategy for it. And so the question that often comes up is when there's trouble in a marriage, it's like, ooh, we need couples therapy.
Yep.
We need to go to counseling.
So, Clint, do you believe in therapy?
Well, sure. I think most people are probably going to want to wonder, before we go to therapy, what can we do ourselves? What can we do at home before we resort to going to therapy? And I think that's part of what we want to talk about today, right?
Well, so Clint and I actually, this is weird because people know me as like, oh yeah, Kris Krohn's that guy that's done like thousands of real estate, $1 billion of this and business and all that. They don't know that I graduated from Brigham Young University in Marriage, Family, Human Development. And my wife graduated in the exact same thing, which means that our only professional commonality that we actually share, period, is that we've sat in on many classes that are all about basically marriage advice and therapy. And these are the courses you take for pre-therapy and how do you raise a family and how do humans develop. But I'll never forget, though, the advice on conflict resolution, because I use it all the time in business, but I use it all the time in marriage. And yeah, I mean, we have a system that we lean into. But I'm not going to lie, we developed it out of a lot of pain and developing a lot of unproductive systems. There's always you're always leveraging a system, whether you know what it is or isn't. We had some counterproductive systems that definitely put us on the rocks more than once.
Kris, I know that over the years and I'm going to direct this to you for this question, Kris. Over the years, you've taken a lot of clients on that you've mentored, and many of them have struggles in their relationships and marriages. Is couples therapy your go-to when someone's having a struggle like that?
I think couples therapy is a little bit more of an extreme go-to. I think it actually just starts with, if you guys are going to be married, you have to have a system. And I go back to business because guess what? When you start a marriage or a relationship off, you're forming an entity, right? Literally, we created an entity the day that we got married. It was no longer just me and you. It was you, me, and us. And sometimes I'm doing something for Clint, but sometimes I'm doing something for us. And so there's actually 3 different parties that we're addressing. In business, you form an entity, and that entity comes with a fairly blank slated operating agreement, which is these are the rules of how we are going to conduct ourselves. And Clint and I think when we got married, we had almost nothing other than don't cheat on me and be nice. Like that was it. It was a very blank operating agreement.
I gotta pause. I gotta get Colin's take on this. Kris, you are approaching this marriage like such a man, like such a business owner. Like, no, it is an entity. That takes the romanticness out of it.
No, we actually have a sexy name for this thing.
I want to hear from Colin. How do you feel about your business as a marriage?
We're all young and naive, and we don't think like that.
Yeah.
We just get married, and we think everything's going to be great. And for example, when we first got married, we found very quickly that we had different upbringings when it came to chores and cleanliness.
Money.
Was Kris a slob?
No. I was the slob.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I was so anal retentive.
I am
Role
getting to
reversal.
a point. So, you don't really think when you get married, you have to have real conversations about this, but you do. So we got our little apartment, and I'm used to throwing my clothes on the floor.
Drove me nuts.
And drives Kris crazy. That's my operating system. I'm happy with it. Kris has his operating system, which is to line everything up by color, etc.
Alphabetize it.
Yes, pretty much. And he's just getting upset, and I'm just like, why are you so upset? Like, it doesn't bother me, but it bothered him. Yet there was no actual conversation about how do we as a couple want to keep our apartment.
Well, and this actually gets back to where conflict really comes from is we don't have agreements in our operating agreement. I think that we kind of form this idea that if we're in a committed relationship, somehow that entitles me to get things from you, even though we haven't agreed to those things. And what an operating agreement does is it actually lays out, well, what have you actually agreed to? And when I think back to all my early frustrations, clothes on the floor is actually a really great one. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why can't you just pick up your clothes? But we actually had never formed an agreement of what our code of conduct was when it related to cleanliness or organization. And so I kept holding Glenn to an expectation that I assumed, how convenient of me, came with marriage. I don't know how I got there. I mean, frankly, that was really idiotic of me to just assume. So like if I could time machine back to the beginning and tell myself, hey, idiot, you're about to have over the next decade 2,000 fights over Glenn's lack of organization, but you realize you don't actually have a right to hold her to a standard that she hasn't agreed to.
Yeah. So eventually we got there, and it was years down the road and a lot of breakthroughs for you over this, but we finally came to an agreement on it.
That I would pay a bunch of people to do it for you.
Well, not when it came to the closet. When it came to the closet, It was Kris honors himself. His side of the closet is as clean as he wants it to be, and he lets go because I still, 20 years later, do not always pick up my clothes. And he's okay with that now because that's my side of the closet, and it does not reflect poorly upon him. It is just my side of the closet, and I can keep it as I like.
By the way, as of this morning and last week, is your closet clean?
This morning it was about 90% clean.
I'm just saying it's actually in great shape.
I had to do a quick pickup, and it's good now.
No, but I read a book called Loving What Is, Katie Byron, and the book caused me to realize when I read the book that I wasn't accepting my reality, and I was arguing it, and I would just add to that I was heaping expectation on Glenn when we hadn't actually formed an agreement. And I, for some people, it sounds very unromantic to think of a business entity and operating agreement. But technically, as you mature a business, you have to debate how you're going to do things, and then you capture it in writing, and then you sign it. And then from that moment forward, it becomes an official moment where from here moving forward, this is how we do things. And when our marriage started getting better, it was when we developed a formal system for how we would introduce changes to our operating agreement or our marriage. And while it doesn't sound very sexy, it's what's kept us out of therapy. And it's actually in some weird way our own version of therapy.
Isn't that crazy? We actually write stuff down like that.
So Glenn, I actually wanted to ask you this because, so you're good with this idea of your marriage having like an operating agreement and no more assumptions. And this was beneficial for you.
Sure.
How many years ago was it the first time we actually signed?
I was going to say, do you guys
rules?
actually write something down?
Probably at least 10 years ago.
At least 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So when we got married, we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Sometimes they have the nickname Mormon. And when we got married in our temple, we weren't even really familiar with the marriage ceremony. So all we knew was we were going to get married and just walk out married. We didn't go through a little bit more of a traditional process where there's like a vow exchange. I promise to do this for you, and I promise to do that. I think we just kind of stepped in with a lot of naive assumptions, and I think that's what's made those assumptions have definitely made a fool out of both of us countless times until we started realizing, hey, if we can't form agreements, if there's not a strategy for how we get to agreement, then we'll always be accusing each other of things that we want that we're not getting.
I love it. The idea at the beginning of marriage to write down, what am I actually promising? Not just am I promising to be true and be with you at all times, like in a traditional marriage ceremony, but other things. What are you really promising? What does that look like exactly? How does the other person feel loved? And I know we could have a whole nother podcast about that, but being specific.
So very traditional to say, to have and to hold, sickness and in health, meaning that like no matter what, the ups and the downs, you are loyal to each other. Are there some of the things in your guys' operating agreement that you would be willing to share?
Yeah. If I were to like kind of group up in general, like some of the hairiest things that went in there, there's definitely, sexual intimacy has been big. There's family organization, like what's our approach to how we raise this family. There's things in there about money, like
we
how
did
we
a
do the game
whole
of money.
creed, a whole family creed on rules and operating systems and values for our kids and how we raise them.
Yeah.
That's on the wall.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we've got to be on the same page about business, how we spend time, where we vacation,
How we spend money.
how we educate our kids, what sexual intimacy looks like, what your love languages are, how do we, get to the end of the journey today, and I think we could define our marriage by, after all these rules, with one simple rule now. That means that we don't even sign things anymore, right? There was a season of that. And the new thing that we really have going for us is this thing called spousal advocation, which is whatever Clen wants, I want because she wants it. It's not pass it through my filter and say, do I get something out of this? Is this going to benefit me? It's just like, no. If this is important to her, then it's important for me to give it to her. And we now both played the spousal advocation game, which means whatever I feel like I need or is important to me, Clem will do everything in her power to give it to me.
Yeah.
And whatever is important to Clem is I'll do everything in my power. But it took this system of how we overcome our conflicts to be able to get to that point. It's a beautiful place, and we've paid a crazy price to get here.
I think it's very important to remember that men and women are different. You're going to be different than your spouse, and you're going to like different things. And there's going to be times you want to spend time together, and sometimes you want to spend apart, and sometimes with your own friends and your own hobbies. And there's going to be things about your spouse that you're like, I don't really like that thing, and I don't understand why you want to spend money on that thing and pursue that interest or hobby. Can we just nod? It seems like a waste of money, because maybe to you it's a waste of money, but
Clem might think that all the animal heads hanging in my trophy room are a pure waste, and I might think that all the rocks in her crystal room are a pure waste.
And I want to be
true.
clear, when Kris says rocks, he's talking about like 6 foot tall crystals.
If anyone
that have
doesn't
light
know, I
under
collect
'em that-
crystals. They are my thing. I love them. They are expensive, and I just want to keep buying them.
But listen, they're my thing, and I love them for her.
That's cute.
And I want
No, it's not cute.
I want Kris to go play in Alaska for 2 weeks in the freezing cold, all he wants, and go hunt bears. I'm happy to stay home and hold down the fort, and I'm so happy that he gets to go do that. And yes, that's also a very expensive hobby, but he loves it, and so I love that for him.
So let's put some of these things in action here.
Yeah.
What happens now? Not at the beginning of your marriage. It's
How do we
20
ha-
years
how-
later?
Yeah, how do we
What
ha-
happens when she does something you don't like?
Yeah, so let's talk about resolution conflict.
Yeah.
First of all, if Clem does, first of all, I had this epiphany one day
Wait,
where
what do I do that you don't like now?
I had this epiphany, Clem, one day where I realized something. When I married you, I wasn't marrying you for everything I knew about you. I was actually also marrying everything I didn't know.
Yeah.
And the greater part of what I don't know is it's huge. It's
True.
endless. It's
I'm a
massive.
woman of many surprises and mysteries.
Yeah, but same the other way around. So here's a very, very simple system for how we handle conflict. It starts with first, instead of attacking the person or going right into debate, it starts with permission. So I might say, hey, Clen, I'd like to set some time aside and talk about X, Y, and Z. I want to talk about something. And what it does is it gives Clen a heads up that it's like, oh, Kris is calling a marriage council and he wants to bring something up. He's taking issue with something and he wants to talk about it. And getting that permission means that we can both enter in at the same time, level-headed, relatively neutral, and understanding that it's time to be understanding
Yeah,
of
'cause
something that we don't understand.
The best time to not talk about it is when you're right in the heat of an argument. Then
Yeah.
you can say,
or when you're hangry.
or when you're hangry. Yes. So it's, hey, can we talk about it tonight at 9 o'clock when the kids are in bed, and we can just have space for just us to talk about this?
Or maybe when we're making love, let's talk about conflict then.
What?
No.
What?
Just nope,
Definitely
nope.
not.
Also not a good time.
Not a good
So
time.
we find the right time where the time is set aside to work on us. Going into that conversation, the second thing of 3 things that we do is we say, hey, I'd like to share some feelings I have on this matter. Can you hold space for me? And again, it's a permission thing.
Yes. So hold space is actually very important. Do you know what that means?
Yeah,
Carson?
what does
Okay.
whole space mean?
It basically means can I be free to share my feelings and have you just be in a space to hear me?
Not react.
It means you're not reacting.
Just
you're
receive.
not arguing immediately back. You're just trying to listen and understand
Yeah.
and let me go as long as I need to. So it's hold space. It's kind of like it's a bubble to shield from any trigger or emotion.
Yeah.
We're just
In other words,
focusing
don't
on-
freak out and get angry. Just
Yeah.
listen to what I have to
It's
say.
just, can you take my perspective and just hear me out as I share my feelings?
Okay.
Once I've had a chance to share, the third step is then to say, what are you hearing?
Yes. And so what are you hearing means that the other spouse gets to repeat back what I hear you saying is, and then repeat back in their words or paraphrase as best you can what it is they heard. And then we say, is that correct?
And that might need
So you're
adjustment.
getting verification that you are understood.
Sure. It's meta communication.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it means that the goal is to communicate calmly, because the moment you're not calm, there ain't no solution coming.
Yes.
We've never been able to produce a really positive outcome
When you're yelling at each
when
other.
we're
we're
yelling.
yelling at each other. So the goal is to stay
Imagine
calm
that.
and communicate. And by the way, if someone gets upset, we just say, hey, we're gonna take a break and come back when the space is neutral again.
So then the next spouse can have a turn and say, would you hold space for me to give some feedback on your idea or on your concern? And then the other person gets to speak, and then the other spouse gets to repeat back what they heard and what they're understanding. And from that point, you can have a discussion in a calmly manner and go back and forth on pros and cons about the situation and try and figure out a mutually agreed upon solution.
It's a very respectful way to communicate with someone that you love. Respect is a face of love. And if you say the wrong things or if you say hurtful things, what it does is it breaks down trust and says, well, this isn't a safe environment for me to communicate in. So this container that we're describing is designed to be a safe environment where people can share. And the reason why we stay calm is because of this rule. I can't expect Colleen to do something that I want if we haven't agreed on it. After going back and forth, we finally have a settlement. We settle on, well, what's the new thing we're committing to? And once we've done that, in the past, we've sometimes written it down. Today, we have a cute thing we do. We interlock pinkies and we say capiche, and which means we like, this is the new standard. We agree on the standard. Now, once the standard's in place, you can hold each other to the standard. And
What does that look like?
well, that just means then if we have formally decided on something, it now means that we're going to support that. For example, recently I told Colleen, I'm like, I feel like I need more time every day with my kids. And every day my goal is to have a special activity with each one of them. And so, yesterday was Sunday, and I helped Livia with Colleen paint her room. And we had 90 minutes of great conversations as we were doing the accent walls together. This morning I got agreement from Colleen that tonight I can do 90 minutes of anime with Lease, who's really into this Naruto series, and we're going to watch that together. And the goal is, and the reason why I want her agreement and support on that is because I want to make sure that we save time for us at a different point, but I want us to have a mutual understanding of when I'm taking time to work with kids. Or, in the past, like sexual intimacy, we've created some rules of, I like it hot and spicy. And so I can't expect Colleen to do something hot and spicy unless we have an understanding of agreement. So Colleen and I have, some rules on what that we've mutually agreed on of how we keep that love life hot and spicy. In the past, I would have just gotten angry saying, why am I not getting this thing? Or aren't I good enough? Or haven't I done enough? All the stupid stuff of entitlement. And I think entitlement is what leads to conflict. I think it's what hurts relationships. You're entitled to nothing without an agreement. And you can never assume agreement. It's something you have to co-create together.
Yeah, with agreement, then you have clear expectations and you're aware of how you need to show up in order to honor those agreements. I'd say there's also rules that we have that I don't think we've really gone over recently, but it's things like we don't name call each other. We also don't use superlatives. You always, you never. We try and talk to each other like really mature adults, because when you get heated and when you put in, petty things, if you're stonewalling, if you're ignoring, if you're doing all these negative patterns that you hear about in psych class, none of that's going to help. So I love that we went to school and we both learned basically marriage and family therapy and human development, because it's really, really helped us have a great marriage, or at least it got us ahead, I think, from the beginning of learning to talk about these things.
Well, a few years ago, Clint and I attended a Tony Robbins relationship retreat. And in this retreat,
Oh, that was fun in Maui.
I kid you not, there's this man that I know, that I respect. He's a good man. He accused his wife of poisoning him.
In front of everybody,
Yeah.
like
And
2,000 people.
and by the way, it wasn't true. And I think it's his third wife.
We don't think it was true.
But I've had a conversation years later since with this individual. They're still married and everything, but Tony made a point to share something. He said, you have to be careful what you say, because some things, when you cross a line, you can't take them back. Once you ring that bell, you can't unring it. And so this person that you're in a relationship with, for me, I go into this relationship saying, this is it. Like, this is not a convenient 2 or 3 year relationship and then I'm moving on to someone else. That getting in and getting out of relationships comes with really, really great costs, and it leads to a strong lack of commitment. You know, Clint and I, we've promised ourselves to each other, period. Like, this is it. This is what we're doing. So these days we take incredible care to build each other up, to advocate for what each other wants and needs, and to be very, very careful that the moment you drop negativity or negative language, some things don't get forgotten. And on the occasions where I've slipped, and I knew that I slipped, it became an immediate pause, walk away, calm down, come back, and then I am groveling on my knees for forgiveness, because I wish I could take that one line back that just wasn't fair. Communicating heatedly, there's nothing good that comes from that.
Yeah.
So you have to develop
Agreed.
a really calm system for connecting, and without demanding things that you don't deserve to have until you have mutual agreement. Until you have that, you're entitled to nothing except your other agreements up until this moment.